And thank you so much for coming to today's African Women Must Lead in Philadelphia. I appreciate you for showing up today. And what we're going to do today is we're going to just announce some housekeeping stuff. We're going to also do the African pledge. Everyone seated has an African pledge next to them. And then we'll open up with Baba Steve doing libations. And then we'll have our illustrious panel come up and answer some questions and just tell us more about themselves and just why are African women so significant to the struggle to free our people. And the panel represents an intergenerational panel. We have from young to elder. And I think that's going to be a really important discussion to see the kind of scope and breadth of where we are right now. So housekeeping is we have the restrooms over yonder outside the door to the right. And if you want to hang up your jackets, you can hang them up out there. And then we have drinks and food as well over here that we can grab as we close out the program. And anything else for housekeeping? You're on camera. As I said before, we have that out.
I just wanted to more formally, for those of you who I didn't get a chance to meet, I'm Mama Aisha Imani,
Yes,
and I just wanted to welcome you to the Ujima Friends Peace Center.
Mama Aisha, can you give some history around what you just told us earlier about where we are? And
so you are.
Please come to the center.
So this is Ujima Friends Peace Center. We are a Pan-African Quaker community that's really devoted to increasing our capacity for peace within ourselves and peace in our families and peace and justice in the world and in the community. And this building happens to be, this part of the building was built in 1963, but we just did renovations this year. But the part of the building that some of you will come in and see, the meeting house, it goes back to 1775. It was a stop on the Underground Railroad. There's spaces they're crawl spaces, right, and what have you that you can see in the meeting house. So there was a big Black Power conference here in the 1970s. But this has been a place of organizing around labor organizing, organizing around women's rights and women's issues. And so we see this as a liberatory space, a space of sometimes resistance, but in other times a space of radical love. So welcome here. When I heard about
Thank you.
And when I heard that Michelle was involved, as in anything she's involved in, something good. And so you're welcome.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for having us at your location. Really appreciate it. It's really a beautiful space, and just all of the assistance and help that Mama Aisha and Gloria has provided to us in this space. So, in addition to that, we're going to what was the next part? We're going to do the African pledge. So, I'm going to ask everyone to stand, and we can just read it together. Okay. I pledge allegiance to my African people.
I pledge to develop my mind and body to the greatest extent possible. I will learn all that I can in order to give my best to my people in our struggle for liberation through revolution. I will keep myself physically fit, building a strong body free from drugs and other substances which can make me less capable of protecting myself, my family, and my African brothers and sisters. I will unselfishly share my knowledge and understanding with others in order to bring about changes more quickly. I will discipline myself to direct my energies thoughtfully and constructively rather than wasting my time in idle hatred. I will train myself not to hurt or allow others to harm my African brothers and sisters, for I recognize that we need every African man, woman, and child to be physically, mentally, and psychologically strong. These principles I pledge to practice daily and teach to others in order to unite my people in the struggle for freedom through independence. Uhuru.
Thank you so much.
Can I ask,
Yes.
can this be used in
Yes.
other?
Yes, in any context. There you go. All right, and so now we're gonna have Bubba Steve come forward and offer libation. Thank you.
First, I'd like to thank Yesterday for giving me this opportunity. I'm very honored. Actually, to be in this space I feel the spirit of our ancestors. I feel my spirit.
Yeah.
I feel the spirit of my children. I feel you all. So thank you, Yesterday, for honoring me with this
Thank you.
task. It's not a task, but this responsibility.
Yeah.
First, let's turn our attention to the spirit world. I'd like to thank the Almighty Creator, the one that made all this possible, the one that provided us our lives, the energy that we have within us, the food that we eat, the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, all of that. That's the one. Then I'd like to give honor to our ancient ancestors prior to slavery, prior to this sojourn here in the West. We were a great people then. So we don't begin with slavery. We begin with our people on the continent, our mother continent. Let's give thanks to our ancestors from that time. Ashe?
Ashe.
Also like to give honor to our ancestors that made the passage here. Some of them didn't survive long. Many of them did. But we survived as a people because we're here now. So let's give thanks to those. Ashe? Let's give thanks to the more current heroes of our people. And if you like, you can call out their names as we honor their contribution to our survival. Ashe?
Ashe. Harry Tubman.
Presente.
Ashe?
Philip Lewis.
Presente.
Presente.
Asada Shakur.
Presente.
Ashe?
Robert Williams. Presente.
Ashe?
Automatics.
Presente.
Nat Turner.
Ashe?
Presente. Gabriel Price.
Ashe?
Queen Nzinga.
Yeah.
That's just it.
Let's honor our family members that became ancestors in recent times. Call out their names. Ashe?
Solomon Taylor.
Alice Allen.
Donovan Treasury. Silka
Renee
Lewis.
Garble.
Ashe? Ashe? Ashe?
Ava Thrash.
Ashe?
Ashe.
Now let's look forward to the future for those unborn that we're preparing this life for. We want to reduce the struggle that they have to encounter when they take over the reins. So let us thank ourselves for producing that next generation. Ashe?
Ashe.
Ashe?
Ashe.
Ashe?
Ashe. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. So as we continue the program, we would like to just give me 1 second, please. Okay. So we decided to have an African Women Monthly events all throughout what we call that northern region, which is, we had 2 events in Brooklyn with our sister organization, NPDOM, International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement. We had an event in Washington, D.C. at the end of February, so that rounded out Black History Month into Women's History Month. And this is one of the final events that we're having for the month of March. I think it's important to really center African women's lived history, experiences, and struggles because they're not always at the forefront of conversation, or because we just do the work. It's not always documented the amount that we do and contribute to the work of liberating our people. And as we all know, African women have always led, continue to lead, and will probably lead us into the new free world, right? So in the African National Women's Organization, we are anti-imperialist, anti-colonial African women's membership organization. We do not believe that capitalism can be saved. We do not believe that the current system that we're currently in will solve the problems of our people. And so we organize ourselves to contend with the issues that colonialism has created in our lives. And we also plan, we create dual and contending power institutions that seek to mitigate some of the harm that colonialism has done. And so today's panel is going to discuss some of those harms, but it's also going to discuss some of the the work, the successes, the survival, the resistance that has happened amongst our community to help us mitigate those issues. And the African National Women's Organization is always seeking members and people to support our organization. There's so many things that we are doing right now. And we'll talk more about that as we get later on in the program. But for now, I'm going to introduce Comrade Mariam, who's also a panel member, to give us a little presentation, a little intro. And I will turn the television back on.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready, whatever is going.
Okay. All right. So this is an organization, this is a presentation I made about a month and a half ago, or 2 months ago, rather. It's called African Women for the African Struggle. And honestly, this is just, some reasons why you should join ANWO and why this organization is in fact necessary, because it's unlike any, there have been multiple women's organizations that have done work for African women in the past, but ANWO is unique because it puts forth, the theory of African internationalism and connects it to the struggle of African women at home and, worldwide. So as President Yejide said, ANWO is anti-imperialist, anti-colonial. It's a revolutionary African international organization for people who want to organize around pressing local and national and international issues to the special oppression of African women. Okay, the whole screen. Okay, let me see.
If not, I didn't see it.
Okay, yeah. So this is a little bit of history behind why the African National Women's Organization was formed. Of course, we're under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party. So that plays the primary role in our organizing and the theory of African internationalism. So there was, and Comrade Yejide, if I'm not mistaken, you were there, correct? Yes, there was a conference in Washington, D.C., and then there was another one also in the UK in London. And essentially these conferences happened and they wanted to talk about what they could do to organize African women and to address like the special needs of oppression. Because, there's been different ideologies, there in the past has been feminism that has been marketed to Black women. And then there's been, somewhat of an Afrocentric twist on that, or an African rooted twist on that with Africana womanism, but all of these, somehow are tied to colonialism. And if we understand colonialism as the root of all oppression, as someone said, the slave master's tools will never dismantle the slave master's house. So everything that ANWO is uniquely created with African women and African people in mind. So the African National Women's Organization was established because they felt like as if, people who were participating wanted to specifically organize amongst African women's oppression and also talk about, colonialism, but also talk about, the state taking African children out of the home, the fact that African women don't have access to proper sometimes tools for careers. We don't often have times because the colonial state, we don't have access to good healthcare, good things that make us, things that, add on to, our quality of life, because, the system is, built on, as Chairman Omali Yeshitela would say, parasitic capitalism. So it was built on African women's backs, but not for African women or African men to necessarily have any benefits from the system. So, and this is, I guess I'll read the whole quote. And this is what the primary reason when I was looking through the texts of, previous documents that ANWO created, this quote stood out to me. "We want an end to the political and social oppression and economic exploitation of African women. We believe in the absolute, unequivocal, political, social, and economic equality of African women and men. We believe that a fundamental test of the progressive or revolutionary character of any organization, party, movement, or society is its commitment, confirmed in practice, to the destruction of the special oppression of women and the elevation of women to the rightful place as equal partners and leaders in the forward motion of the development of human society, and as leaders, makers, and shapers of human history." So one thing, what I really got out this quote is when, you know, a lot of movements, when they organize women, there are a lot of contradictions. You know, sometimes they, unfortunately, a lot of times they want women to be on the back end or in the back while, you know, the man organizes. And, you know, in Anwo and, you know, the Uhuru movement, we understand that if a foot is on a brother's neck, a foot is on a sister's neck as well. So if the brothers don't have good health care, they have mass incarceration, that's going to affect the women, that's going to affect families, that's going to affect the quality of life. So essentially women need to not only organize for themselves, but we also, because we are, you know, the makers and shapers of human history, it's important for us to organize on the forefront of the masses and, you know, address the specific needs and issues, because we're the ones, you know, primarily a lot of times we're the first teachers, we're the ones who primarily are the caregivers to children. You know, we have all these certain roles. So, you know, if the women don't have access to, you know, education, if they don't have access to healthcare, if they don't have access to any of their needs, the rest of everyone pretty much, you know, is not going to have that either. So in this quote, I can understand sometimes it could be a bit confusing. Like we also recognize that there is no such thing as women in general. There is a difference between the women of the oppressor nation and women of the oppressed nation. And when I was once again going through documents, that always, because, you know, if we talk about colonialism and what a human is defined as under colonialism, African people are considered human. Under colonialism, that's one of my best friends. He just walked in. Okay. Under colonialism, you know, African women are not considered people, and neither are African men. So it's interesting when you see a lot of women's, you know, a lot of organizations that are geared and targeted towards women, you know, they try to do this separation of, you know, there's women and then there's men. But like, to be honest, African men aren't considered people either. So there's also no such thing as men in general in this case. You know, there's men who are oppressed. There's men of African descent. There's, you know, our comrades who are Black and brown and oppressed. And then there's the people who hold the foot on their neck. So that's what we understand. And these are things I got from some of the Anwo literature. And this is a part of why Black women need revolution. And of course, you know, for a lot of us in our personal lives, these are things we have experienced, or our mothers, sisters, daughters, etc., have experienced at the hands of, you know, what we would call the state. The first one is Black women face some of the highest levels of exploitation, violence, and poverty worldwide because of colonial mode of production. And, you know, even if you yourself don't necessarily identify as a revolutionary, you know, look how many Black women got laid off in the past few months, myself included. You know, look at how, you know, they were supposedly making all these jobs, and now between a war and between certain systems and certain programs being cut, all these Black women have, so many Black women have lost their jobs. Programs and policies tinker at the edges, but leave intact the same colonial system that keeps us working harder for less, criminalized and silenced. So when I think of programs and policies tinker at the edges, you know, every 4 years they want you to vote for a new, you know, colonizer to, even colonizers that look like us, to go in and be in these programs, or they want people to run for office. And, you know, they're saying, we're going to address the issues that, like we were saying, we're going to address education, we're going to address mental health, housing, hospitals. And a lot of those things, Democrat, Republican, those things don't get solved because the primary contradiction is colonialism. And when you vote for someone, whether it's the mayor, you're not voting against colonialism. You're just voting for whoever's enforcing it at that time. Our labor builds wealth we don't control. And, you know, like this goes back to what Chairman talks about when we talk about parasitic colonialism. Every single thing, you know, we're here at a Quaker, a building that is run by Quakers. And a part of this building, as, you know, Mama Aisha was talking about, we have little hiding places from the Underground Railroad. And when I see things like that, even aside from now, like our labor clearly builds wealth, whether it be our music, whether it be, you know, the fact that we work in factories. But hundreds of years ago, our labor literally built the country, and our labor still builds the country. And from unpaid reproductive labor to underpaid jobs, Black women's work fuels economies while we remain dispossessed of power and resources. And number 4, which is, of course, the most important point, our liberation is tied to the liberation of all African people. And this is my favorite thing of that Anwo, and I'm going to keep saying this throughout this presentation. Anwo addresses the needs of course, African women, but it doesn't separate from African men, because oppression of African people, you can't liberate half the race or a quarter of the race or some of the race and expect, African people to truly be liberated. So our mission at Anwo is to be the political home for African women, especially oppressed segment of the African nation, to empower and advance our issues by effecting change politically, socially, and economically through collective organizing and sisterhood. And, I've been in organizations in the past, and I'm not going to specifically name any organizations, but, some organizations, they have women's units or they have women's, groups. And, some of them really exist in name, but I've, of course, as a member of African People's Socialist Party, I organize for the party, but some of the most effective organizing I have done within the last year specifically has been for Anwo. And, our vision is to create a world where African women have agency, are valued and protected, and are makers and shapers of a new society. And I'm not going to read this whole thing because this is, a bit repetitive of some of the other things I talked about, but we're here to organize, and organizing has never been easy. No one is going into this kind of work seeing the kind of system we have and thinking that this is going to be like necessarily the most fun time. These are issues that quite literally affect people's mental health, and we're seeing these issues on not even the micro but a macro scale. So the process of changing the world is not easy, but together we will win. And that's another thing I really want to emphasize before we continue with the program, because when you organize and you see some of the things, especially in an area like Philly, or if you live in Brooklyn or you live in DC, especially when you see how hard the system has hit African people, it's hard to think that we're winning sometimes, because sometimes look what we're doing in Cuba. We just had an event on solidarity, with Mama Michelle and Baba Steve. Right now they're low on food, they're low on, their electricity is not good. If working at all, it's hard to believe we're winning, but look how the spirit of, and when people talk about the spirit of people, that you can only hear that so many times, but there really is a spirit that goes along with this work. And none of us would be here, or none of us would be organizing or interested in organizing if we didn't think that there was a way to win. And there absolutely is. I'm not going to play that whole video. So I'll just go to the very end. This is a QR code for anyone who might be interested in membership. This is just it leads you to the Anwo application. And so if anyone is interested or scans it and wants to send it to their mother, their cousin or sister, we're going to continue the program. But, if there's anyone who has any questions, I'm here, as well as Comrade Yesterday and our panelists. Guru.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you for that thorough explanation of Anwo.
And so we'll get started with.
Yes, you can let the QR come back up.
Oh, sorry. I'm over here doing stuff backwards. Yes, I can. How do you get back to it?
I think
There we go.
that should be good. Okay, got it.
Okay.
Okay.
So you won't be distracted. I'm going to turn the screen on. And I'm going to introduce our panelists up to the stage now. And first I'm going to introduce Mama Michelle Strongfield. Clap, clap, clap. Mama Michelle Strongfield is a founder and director of I Am Science Education Group, and dedicated to increase representation of our youth of color in STEM and STEAM professions, with more than 40 years as an experience. Hold on, I might have gotten this wrong. With more than 40 years experience as an educator
physician and advocate of quality health care with the elimination of health disparities. She has trained and worked in the U.S., Cuba, South America, Africa, and throughout the Caribbean, lead trainer of community health workers in the States and abroad, while serving as chair of the Health Committee for the All African Peoples Development and Empowerment Program, ACDEP, led by her daughter, Dr. Aisha Fields.
Didn't put that in there. It'll be out in there.
A retired professor of anatomy and physiology, community health advocate, and health consultant, Dr. Strong Fields is a longtime associate and member of the Philadelphia Black Women's Health Alliance and an early member of the National Black Women's Health Imperative, formerly the National Black Women's Health Project. She collaborates with the Pan-African Sisterhood Health Initiative, PASHI, developing educational material to a company that boosts production and distribution of eco and health-friendly, sustainable menstrual pads worldwide. She is a lifetime member of the African National Women's Organization. And she also serves as the IFCO Pastors for Peace Medical Advisory Board for ELAM. ELAM stands for Escuela Latino Americano de Medicina. Vetting potential medical students to train in Cuba, Dr. Strong Fields believes good physical and mental and spiritual health is divine human right. Welcome.
Yes,
Well,
right. And today I'm here for you.
She's here for wisdom and shade.
That's right. Amen.
So I'm going to call up next my comrade, Mariam Muhammad. I'm going to We just getting up bios, y'all, because everybody didn't get it to me on time. So I'm trying to make sure I introduce people properly. I got it. Thank you. Mariam Aziza Muhammad
That's what I'm talking about.
is the editor-in-chief of Ayanta Magazine, a poet, and a member of the African People's Socialist Party. She is also a producer for Why is the Dome TV, where her work centers Black liberation, political education, African self-determination through culture, media, and revolutionary imagination. She is also the Northern Regional Coordinator for the African National Women's Organization. So she's responsible for holding the work together in the region. And it's an amazing, amazing comrade.
Thank you.
I'm going to introduce, yes, clap. I want to welcome my comrade, Tiffany Murphy. Woo, woo. Tiffany Murphy has been a member, she's an educator. Yes, she's she does self-determination economics on her own. She's also built her own businesses. She has run the One Africa, One Nation Farmers Market. She has led that process here in Philadelphia. She has been a member of the NPDEM, International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, just an all-around, well-rounded African human being who is going to contribute all of her insight and experience to this panel. And if I missed anything, you all can feel free to add to it. All right, so that's our panel, comrades. And so let me get to the questions. And there is, if you're thirsty, anything, just water, red and blue, and all of that. Yeah, there's some coffee and tea, etc., and seltzer. So as I said earlier, this is an intergenerational panel. So we have younger to elder. And we wanted to set that up because across this whole experience, every sister has different experiences across these generations. And we wanted to be able to really highlight how those experiences have shaped your outlook on life, but also the revolution, the struggle of Black people, and how you have and are contributing to the ongoing struggle to free ourselves and to mitigate the harm that colonialism is causing in our lives. So I appreciate you all for agreeing to be on this panel. Thank you. So overall, tell the audience more about yourself, what drew you toward the service to African people, and we can keep it brief because we got a whole bunch of other questions, but what drew you to service to African people? And I'm gonna start with Mama Michelle.
Well, I think what I thought about this a little bit is that I think I was always kind of pushed and pulled in this direction
from the time I was old enough to be conscious of it.
Yeah.
And that is because I'm a boomer and I grew up on the west side of Chicago. And as a kid, 9, 10 years old, I would watch young brothers and sisters, well, mostly brothers who came back from Vietnam, and they would come back, and I didn't understand what they were doing, but they were the kids that, you know, when you're 10, 11, you look up to the teenagers, right? So the teenagers would be doing formations and patrolling in the street. Our parents would drag us in the house and make us come in. You don't be outside. We didn't know until later that they were Panthers, that Chairman Fred lived up the way a couple miles in another little township. And he would organize the teenagers and the Vietnam returnees, and they were Panthers. We didn't know, but that's kind of what shaped me. And then fast forward, you know, with other experiences, but then I became a mother. And I saw what was happening in the world to other Africans. And I said, I don't want this for my children. They need to think differently. So we put our children in African-centered schools. We tried to create decent human beings. And I think that for the most part, we have succeeded. We'd be tripping every now and then. But for the most part, my greatest wish and desire was to have decent, African-centered young people in my life, my children. Now I got these other daughters and other children who I'm networking with. That was the greatest motivation for me, to not leave a bunch of sad sack, buying into the system young people who would do nothing but be detrimental to our community. And I think that we have some stellar people in our lives now, and I'm proud and happy. So that's my motivation. Thank you.
Marianne, you want to answer the question? What's your drive to be of service to African people?
I was gonna say, the way my parents raised me, specifically my father was always at some kind of rally. He was always at some kind of protest. Sometimes, you know, he'd be the person doing chants or he had a microphone in his hand. And so like when I was the area I'm from, you know, Bridgeport in Connecticut, similar to Philadelphia, there's poverty, there's people, and then there's like corrupt politicians. Like our mayor, he went to prison and, you know, they reelected him. I have no idea why. But, you know, like at those different activist spaces are, you know, we're always kind of, you know, that some of the Pan-African or the Black nationalists, which I'll use, the Black nationalist spaces were full of people who are always like, we need ownership of like our schools, we need our own hospitals, we need our own, you know, we need our own everything because the system doesn't provide us, or it's not tailored towards us. So, you know, and that's what led me to like discover the Uhuru movement. You know, a lot of it was just seeing like in real time what the system especially does to young people. And I don't talk about this often. I have a classmate, and this is before I got to college. Well, right when I first started college, I had a classmate back home, and he was murdered by the police in my home state. And then overall, because, you know, Connecticut is thought as of like a very progressive state for some reason. I don't know why. We have Yale. It's thought of a very progressive state. And then I saw like just the fact that like there was no justice, and the fact that, you know, to this day his family, you know, was without him and they don't have justice. Things like that just made me, because a part of it was, you know, the righteousness that my parents instilled for me, but also a lot of it was just anger. Because especially like a lot of people, and that's also what gives me hope, because I see older people who are also angry. And I know this isn't like a new thing, because, you know, younger people my age are angry too. So a lot of it is, you know, what's been instilled in me, but also what I've seen as a young adult, just being young and African in America.
Yeah, thank you, Comrade. Comrade Tiffany,
Say the question again.
what drove you to service to African people?
Oh, I think that's a layered question for me, right? I think in my years of organizing, I've seen this pattern, but I think with me inherently, there was a curiosity, right? Seeing inequities, seeing how life was unevenly keeled for Africans, right? The way we lived and our constant comparison to white people, right?
Yeah.
White safety, white wealth, and things like that. So I'm thinking like as early as 9, 10 years old, I would see red, black, and green flags in my neighborhood. And it was one of the original row houses off of 53rd and Girard, right? Another story for another day. But I saw like this beauty in this blackness. And it was, I didn't understand how deeply political it was at the time, but it piqued my curiosity. So, I was always drawn to anything black, anything that, brought joy and organization and struggle amongst our people. So, in college, I joined the BSU because I went to a PWI and I wanted that sense of community. I wanted that sense of organization.
What is PWI?
Predominantly white institution.
Right.
Right. So, I was always drawn to it and talking to, scores of other, African men and women and men and women. They have this curiosity too, but they don't know where to redirect it, right? To get those questions answered, right? About why this shit exists or why our people are catching hell, right? This is why revolution and the African People's Socialist Party, the work is vital, right? To not only just poke at the curiosity, but to answer the questions in its fullness and invite people to participate in the struggle, right? So that's why I've done it, right? Because, the party has really given me the clarity that I need in terms of what the world looks like, why things are happening, and the role that I can play in overturning a lot of that.
Yeah.
So, that's how I arrived.
I think what everybody just really is the clarity. Everybody mentioned like seeking clarity or being angry and just having something to work towards, because that's what we have to do to channel some of that anger, right? Like if we don't, you're gonna destroy some. You know what I mean? You're gonna engage in unhealthy activities that's not good for ourselves or our community. And so we have to know where to channel that. And organization for many of us has been the key to that, right? Some other kind of some street organizations have become the channel for some other people, right? Like, but people are seeking organizations somewhere to process the anger and be able to be a part of community, however it looks. And that's really important to, how African people have always organized ourselves, whether it's an official organization or if it was just coming together, needing to be closer to one another. So Tiffany, I'm gonna start with you with the question, and then I'm gonna come back down the table. So you have spent some time in the Office of Economic Development of the African People's Socialist Party, and one of your responsibilities was to lead the One Africa, One Nation marketplace here in Philadelphia. And and you've also developed your own economic development projects, right? So what has that experience taught you about the limits of individual hustle versus the power of organized collective economics, and how does that look in community?
All right, so let's talk about hustle, hustle economics, because you and I were talking about that yesterday, right? And how hustle mentality and hustle economics will only get you but so far, right? The hustle economy and hustle approach is only serving for self, right? There is no to what end. You're doing it as a means to, get a quick dollar or to go ahead and solve an immediate problem, but you don't build an ecosystem with hustle economy. There's no strategy, there's no to what end, right? And I think, colonialism has taught our people that, whatever we could do to go ahead and get over the hump, to go ahead and solve a short-term problem by way of this hustle economics, then we should do it. But it doesn't teach us strategy. It doesn't teach us collective economics. It doesn't teach us how to go ahead and pour and invest in our own people, right? So, hustle economy, just the whole hustle thing is dead, right? In my mind, because it doesn't take us anywhere. So, I want to say that. What was the second part
And
of the
how does
question?
that look in community when we're talking about collective economics?
It's anti-community. When you think about hustle economics, just to go back to what I was saying. Yeah, it's anti-community, it's anti-connection. It creates this, a vacuum, so to speak, for people, again, because you're only thinking about yourself. You're not thinking about the future of your family. You're not thinking about the future of your people.
So
right?
what does it mean then, if we're not hustling, if we are engaged in collective economics, how is that different from hustling?
So collective economics, it one builds community, right? I think all of us as Africans and oppressed people have a deep desire for community, whether we know it or not, right? We have this deep desire for connection, right? And, just thinking about sharing resources, right? As I organize and I talk to people, about all types of things, I think about one never coming at the expense of another, right? And hustle economics does that, right? It's an extension of colonialism, if you really want to talk about it. Because, getting to that dollar, somebody is something or someone has to pay the price, right? But with collective economics, everybody wins. If you put all your resources, if you put all your ideas, if you centralize your strategy, then everyone wins. That's how so many other, groups are able to succeed. So you think about like Chinese and Korean communities, right? That's how they live. They live in shared quarters. They pool their money to go ahead and build infrastructure. They believe that this is how power is built, right? You think about the Puerto Rican community or the Latino community, same principles, right? Everybody plays a part in the growth of this economic development project by way of our poppy stores that we see, right? You see, kids as small as 6, they work in the register or they cleaning the floors, but everybody plays a part in the generational wealth, right? And no one has to suffer. No one suffers, right? This is protective of the current economic capacity and future economic capacities. So, collective economic development is always the way to go. It has to be, but we have to remove the colonial lens in which, the system has, forced on us and lean into our people. Because, the answers are always in the room when it comes to our people with anything.
Thank you, Comrade. Miriam, I'm going to pivot just a little bit, talk about you. You studied a lot up here already about your motivations for joining organization, but how has your political understanding changed since you began organizing with us? And, I don't want you to draw comparisons toward organizations, but just also like, what's the difference between how you understood the world and how you navigated them before and so how you understand it now? And is that difference enhancing or providing more clarity for the work that you are now engaged in?
You know what? One thing I'll say is, political education is one of the most important things that has really led me to my political development and my understanding of Africa, my understanding of African people. But I will say with the Uhuru movement, we have political education, but the on the ground work is really what has moved me. I haven't been in the Uhuru movement, for example, as long as, Tiffany yourself, but even when we get in these rooms and we solve problems just like that by having a conversation, a lot of times, and I'll say this as a person who sometimes gets anxious, it's so easy to freeze. And for example, Comrade Yeji, you see me freeze. I'm like, what do I do? What am I supposed to do with that? We're really solvers in a lot of ways. And like Tiffany said, the people who are the solutions in the room to the problems are usually here. And, I think a lot of times, especially because before I came in the Uhuru movement, I used to identify as a Marxist-Leninist. And, I've had friends who.
What does that mean for people who don't know that? means, right?
It's just a colonial term.
Okay.
Because I could never really dictate the science of like Marxism, Leninism, for example, as well as like other comrades I've known. But Marx is the ideology. Marx is about communalism, communism, people coming together, the workers having, collective power over the resources. And Leninism is the actions in which we carry out. Leninism is like the praxis.
Right.
Leninism is like, the establishment of a state, because, some people think there can't be a revolutionary state, but under Leninism, from what I understand, there can. So, the praxis of pulling things together, the ideology of making people come together, owning resources, having distribution of the wealth equally amongst people, as they would call it, the joint dictatorship of the proletariat of oppressed nations. And then Leninism is the ability to carry those things out. That's what that's a part of what I've dictated. There's so many books about it, but here's the thing. When I was amongst organizing, I have people who could beautifully dictate a line, but like, we need to go and, for example, hold an event. We need to go and find out who's doing, and for example, for this event, we had to find out the venue. We had to put together the resources to pay for the food. We had to navigate, inviting people and having people here. And that is an entire thing, versus, and there's nothing wrong with reading and education, but one of the biggest things is like my ability to give this information to other African people, and for us to say, okay, let's, have a marketplace where we have a bunch of African businesses, or let's have an event where we provide some form of food for people, and we were able to raise money for, sometimes with comrades, if there's a comrade that's locked up, or if there's a comrade that needs hospital funds. The Uhuru movement, I've seen in short times, let's like carry out actions. And, I was, when Ferguson happened, I was in middle school, but I could only imagine, because I remember I asked you, I said, okay, if something was to pop off, what would we do? He said, we talk about the logistics, and as soon as we go, we carry it out. And I think that's a thing that what makes this versus, and I mean, African internationalism, of course, is an ideology, but that's what makes Uhuru a movement. Like, we move. And that's what has differentiated from previous experiences. And I'll say my one thing is, like, personally, because I like to do more on the ground work sometimes, and this is, a self-contradiction, I do read less sometimes. But I think one of the primary things is like the purpose of having this information, because, George Jackson, he died in his 20s, Fred Hampton died in their 20s. And, we don't know ideologically where they would have went because they died. But with the information they had, the main thing was that they were able to carry out actions. And like the Uhuru movement, we're able to carry out actions.
Thank you, Comrade. I appreciate that.
Before you answer, I wanted to piggyback on some of what daughter here says, Tiffany. And she was talking about hustle culture.
Yeah.
And the language of and the connotations of hustle culture are new, but it is not new.
Right.
And if we can just, I was thinking about, as I said, I'm a boomer, but I'm a proud boomer. I'm gonna be 70 this year.
Right.
So don't clap.
Oh,
I'm not here yet, but when it comes, you'll hear me. Anyway,
right.
a hustle culture, and I'm thinking about, the blaxploitation movies. That's the epitome of hustle culture that they pushed and promulgated, on a whole generation of young people. And then fast forward to somebody like Martin, the Martin Show with Hustle Man.
Yeah.
Okay, but even those caricatures of people who were out there hustling, there was still, okay, think about the movie Lackawanna Blues. Did everybody see that? It was a movie that this brother did. It was based on a play that he did. I can't think of his name right now. But it was about a sister who came from the South, bought some property, and filled it up with people who were also migrating north to New York. And in that 2 or 3 day show, it talked about how it showed how there was community there. Even though it was this sister that owned the building, she didn't move by herself. When there was a physical threat to her, the brothers in the spot stood behind her and supported her. And that's what I remember of as hustle, because somebody who has initiative, you know, it's always seemed to me, I came from a family of hustlers, and they weren't just hustling for themselves. That's been taken out of context and placed someplace else, so that these young brothers and sisters who are in hustle culture don't even know that there's a history to that they've been removed from, and it's been bastardized. So that they don't help the community, that they're not communal in thought and deed. So I just wanted to jump on that, because there is a real hustle culture, and people would, you know, there were some people who hustle more than others. You know, the brother would we have a good friend who, when he was a little kid in North Philly, was shining shoes at 9, 10, or 11. But I never see him as a person who was just hustling for himself. He would take his change back, and you know, he lived with his grandparents and do whatever he needed to do with them. We all have many examples like that of what this bastardized hustle culture has removed us from.
But that's also like a response to colonialism, right? Like, it's like you don't have enough.
Right, the hustle?
Yeah.
I mean, but it's always been that
I know,
way.
but
But
you
it's
have
how
to-
we thought of it that is different now. We're thinking, okay, and another example, I was having this conversation with someone else where, I came when, you know, the Panthers were still around, and but COINTELPRO was whittling them down. You know, it had already been almost a non-existent organization. So we're looking around for places to join, movements to be a part of. And I remember I have younger siblings, many younger siblings, and one of them said to me, "It's not about black anymore, it's about green." And that was jarring for me to hear that from him. And I saw many of his associates and his friends who carried on that way. It became a very clear dichotomy that, like, whatever I was thinking, whatever I was into was passe, because it ain't about black. It's about green. You know, and so then, you know, they get tracked into this whole hustle. Now, they were hustling with suits and ties on. They were getting MBAs. You know what I mean? And so it was still hustle culture. And very detrimental. A lot of those brothers and sisters had mental health problems, like we did too in the community, but for other reasons.
Right.
You know, that's when, let me not go off on this tangent, but I just needed to say that. Did you ask me another question?
I did not. You told me to stop before I asked.
Because you know I gotta go get my memory pills.
You got it. But you started to touch on this when you were introducing yourself. So I'm gonna ask you this question about how important was it for you to raise children that had an understanding of themselves with African people? And what did you already explained some of this, but if you can go into it a little bit more deeper, what did you hope or expect their contributions would be for themselves and their community?
Sure. Well, first, let me give you, I'm not from Philly, obviously, but my husband is a long-term Philadelphian. He's a lifelong Philadelphian. I am an honorary Philly John, but that's another story for another time.
Was it now Philly John?
Yes.
Whatever, okay. So anyway, when we came here, we didn't have community. We're both cradle Catholics, so we had to break away from this crazy system, that crazy whole thought pattern. And we're looking for something, and we got brought into community with people, thankfully, who had African people's best interests at heart. But first they looked at us and said, "Y'all young dummies, let me show you." You know, and this happened time after time where people would bring us in and say, okay, and it would be people that we needed for a specific thing or maybe for long term. I don't, but it brought us into a community of, struggle and thought and preparation, and then looking at the children and preparing them. So it was nothing for us to walk down 52nd Street, we were in West Philly, and the children would be singing liberation songs
Mm-hmm.
that they still sing. They're in their 40s now. They sing these songs now. I mean, we get together and they're like, remember that song, so and so? And I'm astounded. But it made that kind of impression on them. Now, everybody is not, a flag-bearing revolutionary, but they're doing their part. They're raising their children to think. My grandson asked for African-American macaroni and cheese because he said that other shit just is not hitting it. Or, when we were in COVID, there were like 12 of us pandemicking together by accident. But we had our grandkids there with us, and they're singing songs to their teachers. My favorite continent is Africa. Do you know what that did to my heart? I'm tearing up now thinking about it.
Oh.
Because all you want for your children and your grandchildren now is to know who they are,
Right.
to know that to struggle for them is the right thing to do.
Right.
Here's how to be strategic as you struggle. It ain't always gonna be struggle. Sometimes we have fun. Sometimes we party. We're gonna be saying this pledge every time we get together from now on. Thank you. I'm crying. So you know. I was trying to catch it before it fell out. But my point is, and I know I'm kind of maybe rambling a bit, but I just have hope. And when we say we struggle, we win, I really have to believe that. For example, Cuba is going through horrific times. I spent a good bit of time there. I was with the first group of medical students who went there from the US. At my old age, I went. But then, that's another story too. But right now, the flotilla got through. And so a few tons of aid got to them. Can you imagine some of the students, and I have some some applications, pamphlets. We've already gone through the cycle for this year, for next year. Can you imagine that first of all, the professors can't get to campus to teach.
Right.
The doctors are doing surgeries and working under lights, phone lights, flashlights. Can you imagine? But they still are providing the same kind of service that many of us in this country can't get.
Right.
So I'm amazed by their resilience. I want that for my kids and grandkids. I want them to feel the kind of energy and the kind of ability to say, hell no, no, this is not right. This is right. This is what we're going to do, not that. And I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to paint Cuba in some weird, light. It's not utopia.
Right.
It is not. But it's where people, and this is going to be a weird aside, but they expected Iran to fold, but the people have a deeper resilience than was even, and that's how I feel about Cuba. It's the same kind of resilience built on lots of struggle, lots of pushback that they've had to deal with. 60 years of having to deal with this nonsense.
Yeah.
We've had 400 years.
Right.
So we need to take a close and a long, hard look at ourselves and our ability to be resilient. And that's why I hang out with y'all, really, because I feel the hope and I feel the energy. And I'm old. I need to be able to look behind me and see that there's somebody behind me. That this was not all for naught. That this is, that this is for, we're gonna win. I may not hang in there and see it happen. I hope I do. I still got a little fight in me. I got a cane I carry just in case, you know what I mean? But I'm hopeful. And I forgot the thread of the question, but at the end of it all,
How important was it to
it is so very important because it leaves me with hope. And not just my biological children, but I consider you my children as well. So I really, I'm hopeful and I'm optimistic.
That's what we need, though. We need to have optimism, because if we aren't optimistic, if we feel like there is no hope, then what's the struggle for?
Yeah.
What are you even doing? What you waking up for?
That's right.
You know, what you going and go, like, if there's no hope to change any of this, then why are we even
Right.
in the streets making phone
Right.
calls, volunteering?
It's not
Dude,
performative.
It's not. It's
It's
like,
not
so you have to have that hope. Was it Che Guevara who said, I don't forget the quote, but somebody knows the quote, the most important revolutionary love is, maybe I'm getting it mixed up with something else, but you have to have hope in order to win, right? Like you have to work towards something. I'm gonna go back to Tiffany and ask you, for people who believe, no, I'll ask this up front. What are some challenges, and also the point about Cuba before I go to Tiffany. When I was there, you know, there's people who have not been there, or people who have been there when things were really good. There's often this way of utopianizing it, idolizing it, so that it's like you.
It's a fetish.
Yeah,
almost.
it is, right? Like, I just need to be on Cuba. When I was there, my experience was a little bit different, right? Like, I felt like I was angry. As I'm always angry when I go to visit places where we don't have enough, right? I'm like, when I went to Sierra Leone, I was angry. I wasn't like, but I was angry that children had to wake up in the morning and go carry buckets of water on their head and bring it in order to fill the toilet to flush it.
Yes.
You know, I was angry that there wasn't toilet tissue in all the bathrooms in Cuba, and if there was no toilet lids because they could not get toilet lids. Simple stuff that we take, we don't realize that requires connection and community in order to facilitate the simple things that you can enjoy in life. In Cuba, but what really motivated me was that despite not having and feeling the intensification of the embargo and the blockade on Cuba, is knowing that we went to the hospitals, seeing how the doctors was like, yeah, this ain't nothing new. We're gonna struggle it through. We're gonna do the work. We gotta save people's lives, and by hook or crook, we're gonna do it. And the people all had this sort of like, yeah, they keep squeezing us, but you know, we're gonna continue to do what is necessary, right? And I appreciated that about Cuba. So my anger, I'm still angry. I'm angrier now that all these other things are really, I could see it like really squeezing Cuba, but I'm also like really confident about Cuba's resistance, not just from the government, but like the people.
Right. That's
The
really what
people
it is.
is gonna maintain it.
That's really what it is.
Tiffany, what are some challenges that either you experience or that you see for other African women in our community that reveal the need for us to build power and take control over our own conditions?
In the beginning, when I first started organizing, I did see them as challenges, but I think they're just contradictions that need to be overturned, right? So I don't see them as challenges anymore. I think we just need to keep reinvesting in our people in a lot of different ways, by way of political education, programs, resources, and things like that. Colonialism runs so deep, and like, it's wild because you don't realize just what colonialism looks like in our everyday lives, by way of our education, by way of our
We lived it
economics.
so long, we don't even identify.
Right, it's
with that.
become our everyday way of living, right? So one of those things I see formerly as a challenge, but now is just a contradiction, is the lack of trust that we have in our own people, right? Yeah, it's hard to organize because we don't trust that we have the solutions, we have the resources to go ahead and build our own struggle amongst our own people, right? To build the resources or to protect and defend our own people, right? And colonialism has taught us that from the rooter to the tutor, especially around economic development. You know, colonialism has taught us once we get something, we got to hold on to it. We don't share the secrets. Don't share the red, don't share the sauce, right? Or you're going to lose it. When it's actually the absolute opposite. When you start to pour into your people with the resources and the tools that you have, everybody wins. Everyone flourishes.
Right.
And it starts to become anti-colonialism. So, I mean, that's just one of several challenges, but I think it's a lack of inherent trust amongst our people.
What do you think creates that distrust though? Is it us just
It's
being shady to
messaging.
one another or?
It's messaging. It could be a lot of things,
Right.
but it's more or less messaging and prior experiences and trauma that's attached to it.
Mhm.
You know, because we didn't come out the womb
Mhm.
with having this mistrust. It comes through experiences. So,
Right.
you know, we attach ourselves or we connect with people, and you know, some people have a tendency to go ahead and bring inherent harm.
Mhm.
But you know, that mistrust comes from white people.
Yeah.
Generally, right? Where they try to build these spaces for us to go ahead and be vulnerable and trust, and then they hurt us somehow. So then we have this lens of mistrust, this colonial mistrust with everybody, especially our people.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I think that's just, you know, that's the biggest challenge that I see. But, you know, there's several challenges
Mhm.
where it comes to organizing, collectivizing, you know, pooling our resources and things like that from an economic development
Mhm.
lens,
Mhm.
right? So,
And women in general, like African women in general in communities? Do you feel, because you know, some people might say that Black women don't like each other and be jealous of each other and we might. Are you saying amen? I'm like, that's a
I was actually
lie.
thinking that in my head.
I think it depends. Based on my experiences, I think African women have a tendency to trust each other more
Yeah.
because we share the same struggle, right? We have a tendency to lean in. We have that connection. We have those shared and lived experiences. But it doesn't happen everywhere because
Right.
it's, you know, it could be one
Right.
African woman that burnt you,
Mhm.
or that wants to take advantage, or you know, participates in, you know, opportunism. That's an opportunist
Mhm.
at heart. So it really depends. But in terms of African women, I've seen, you know, some powerful things happen when African women get into a room. So,
Yeah.
Right.
but and that has changed my perception in terms of what these challenges could be,
Mhm.
where it's just obstacles.
Yeah.
But when you organize everybody into a room, especially African women, you tell everybody what the goal is, what the plan is, and look, everybody usually nods and agrees, right? Right? You start to rebuild that trust. So, you know, I just really appreciate the work that ANWO is doing to go ahead and bring African women into the same room,
Yeah.
to tell them what the plan is.
Yeah.
This anti-colonial plan and how we need to carry it out, because you know leadership really, you know, leadership is the key.
So can I
Yeah.
jump in again? I'm sorry. I'm
No,
piggybacking on all of your
No, no.
comments because it's resonating with me. Because I was gonna start my day today by saying I am the child of Big Mama
Mhm.
and Auntie this one
Mhm,
and Grandmama this one. I mean, I am their direct descendant.
That's right.
And I watched these women, like on my block, for example, as a kid growing up, take control of the block and say, look, it's dirty out here. And get them kids and give them brooms, and we would all come out with our brooms and sweep the block.
Mhm.
You know, or another lady would assign herself the role of black captain, or another sister at church. Yeah. And it might be shade thrown in her direction. People might be pissed off. She might be a little too bossy, but she got the job
She
done.
get it done. That's it.
She will call people
That's it.
together. We
Right.
sit on. I just cannot. The first time I brought Steve to Chicago, he was witness to some of the the front porch meeting of the grandmas and aunties. They'd be sitting on the porch talking about this one and that one but it wasn't just chatter and shade.
Mhm.
It was action and movement. These women had years of organizing, but it wasn't called organizing.
Right. Yeah.
It wasn't called organizing. And they might have had, Miss Hazel might have had a problem with Miss Jerry down the block. But at the end of the day, if something needed to be done, it got done.
That's it.
They would talk about it. They would talk about each other maybe later if they had a couple of beers, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the organization happened
Mhm.
and it got done.
Yep.
I find that there are very few sisters that I can't, you're in a situation, say on a train, and somebody might start cutting up. And you look around. Now, maybe not so much now because I haven't ridden trains lately.
Mhm.
And you look around and you look and you catch an eye and you be like, and the sister be like, I got you. That kind of thing.
Right.
It happens. It's real.
Yep.
Don't y'all give up on that. Because we're more often than not, now every now and then you'll find somebody who, you know, turn her face and won't give you the look. But we're there for each other in unspoken ways.
Yeah.
That's it.
And I find that to be more true than
Right.
not.
Mhm.
Nothing used to, I haven't practiced in a really long time, but nothing would lighten my heart than to walk into a room where there's a patient waiting to be seen or to talk to. And the woman, usually a woman, would brighten up when she saw another Black woman. And I had locks too, you know. They'd be like, oh, you know, and that would change the situation and change the discussion.
Mhm.
Because as one of my motivations for going into medicine, among others, was that I didn't have any people who looked like me helping me with my health care.
Yeah.
And I had a very dangerous pregnancy that, you know, and so, but if I see a sister walk into the room, like right now, I have a couple of, my whole staff is women doctors, right? And I couldn't be happier.
Yeah.
I'll give you their names
Mhm.
at the end of
Okay.
this, so you can refer to them.
Yes.
I couldn't be happier because I know this woman is going to hear me.
Mhm.
Now, I've had some women doctors that didn't hear me and weren't, and so you leave them alone until you find one that does.
That is true.
Right.
Yep.
Just to let y'all know, I do underground medicine in case you.
You gotta do it underground.
We'll talk.
Don't talk underground.
No, I don't practice
Okay.
officially, but I do.
Mhm.
No, so
Why
what's
you looking-
underground medicine?
We're gonna get to the discussion in just a
I was
second.
gonna say, wait a minute,
Keep-
wait a minute,
keep
I'm
us
looking
up
at
together.
what you need to know, bro.
We're gonna let Miriam, let's get Miriam
Stay on
first.
task.
Miriam, what role do you believe young African women must play in advancing the struggle for African liberation? And is that different? I mean, what's that question? But if you want to also answer it, that's different from any woman of any age.
Honestly, I was gonna say, because I don't think the role changes, but I mean the role, you know, obviously, like for example, as a young African woman, I take a lot of leadership from, you know, women who are a little bit older than me. And, you know, now, you know, when I get older, then my job is going to be to do the same for younger women underneath me. And to be honest, I think a lot of times, like in a lot of organizations, and this is another thing I like about the Uhuru movement, they put the men on the front in a lot of organizations, and rarely do you ever see like someone like yourself, like leading all these mass struggles, leading the rallies. And this was an experience in October when we did the Black is Back coalition, you know, like Comrade Akinge, she had me with and mind you, the sound system is bigger than me. I'm 5'1". For anyone watching, I'm 5'1". I'm 5 foot even actually. And they have me, small person, Dwayne was there. They had me with this big sound system and I'm like leading the chants. And then I think another thing was we were walking downtown DC, people see a small person. I think people are like, who's that like small person with the screaming into the microphone? Like, I think things like that are super important because, and I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Young women in advancing the struggle for African liberation.
Yeah, young women are seen as necessary, but sometimes I think they're not seen as like the main person or the main, you know, lead in a lot of organizations and a lot of like, so being on the forefront is so important. And I think that is the role of young women and of course, women who are not as young, you know, our role is always on the forefront because to be honest, and I remember Comrade Yejide, you told me when, you know, the African People's Socialist Party was coming together, there was a running joke, like, you know, with his colonial name, the chairman was named Joe Waller. And there's a running joke, oh, it's Joe Waller and the girls. But it's like, you see a lot of the organizations, the Panther Party, even where I came from, religious organization, the Nation of Islam, like Elijah Muhammad always used to say, 75% of the work is done with the women. And, you know, I have found that to be true in every single organization I have been in where there is women. Like women do the profound majority of the work. And, you know, sometimes they are or are not the faces of it. So I think a lot of times the role of the women and, you know, like, for example, I had a comrade and he was trying to put me onto theory and teach me more about dictating theory because he even said in a lot of organizations, women are, you know, they were taught to carry out tasks. But for example, dictating what an African internationalism was, or you like, you know, a few minutes ago when you asked me, okay, what exactly is Marxism, Leninism?
Right.
A lot of times women, especially sometimes, and I know Mama Michelle can probably especially attest to this, when it comes to things that are seen as the harder things, like dictating theory or the sciences, or, you know, certain things like literally building an organization,
Yeah.
it's usually like people are expecting us to fall secondary.
Yeah.
But like for an organization like ANWO, was like, who else is gonna build up an African National Women's Organization other than like African women? And I think that's the primary thing, is like, it's always important to have young women, especially on the front lines, because, you know, another thing is like, I think it's a Zora Neale Hurston quote, like, if you're silent about your pain, people will kill you and say you enjoyed it. And especially like the role of African women, a lot of times, like people will kill us silently and say we enjoyed it. They're like, oh, well, you know, the struggles you go through, you know, you don't really dictate them, or, you know, or, oh, it's the thing is our situation has to be ignored to put someone else's thing on the forefront. And the thing is, we can organize for our issues and not ignore the issues of our brothers and our sons. We can address, you know, the issues of our sons and daughters, but that's because like under, you know, an organization like an ANWO, like women are seen as not even just like, well, of course, crucial, but like literally just primary to the work that we're doing.
We're a little over time, so I'm gonna ask for, yeah.
Can I just say something? I
You
just
wanna
need
answer
to-
you? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just need her to know that I recognize that the older women in organizations need to step the hell down and move the hell back and let the younger sisters move in. But to do that, we have to talk so that you can get the experience that you've been talking about gaining. Because a lot of us hold, just like, you know, we talk about these legacy organizations, and the leadership they hang on until they drop
Right, and then
dead.
the organization falls.
Yeah, then the organization is a piece of crap, and they just, you know, they're like, what do we do? Our leader's dead, you know, because he didn't train nobody to take his place. And it's the same thing with, you know, any organization, but particularly for us, because we get, you know, we have so little power, we have so little clout, that when we get a little, it's hard to give it up.
Right.
But I'm here to tell you that I'm gonna be in folks' faces about that.
But if you're useful, if you can contribute, I think you shouldn't step down.
If you're useful, step your ass back and let these young people take over.
Okay.
If you're useful, be an advisor. Find a capacity in which you can provide assistance.
Yeah.
You don't have to be out front all the time.
Mhm.
You don't. It's stupid.
I call it rabbi mode. I'm in
You're a
rabbi
rabbi
mode.
mode?
I'm the rabbi.
Yeah, I'm gonna be a
I'm
rabbi.
the rabbi now.
And then
I'm not
just
in the
keel
front, not
over.
in the front. I'm the rabbi. You come for the gems.
I
I
got
got the
you.
gems.
I
I
got
gotta
you.
be in the front. They say
Word.
young people go fast, but the elders know the way.
Mhm.
So there's a
That's
role
right.
for everybody,
That's
right?
sure.
So young people have to chart that territory, because the knees are still good. Megan knees are
That's
still in
right.
effect. But I'm gonna tell you which way to go.
Maybe not.
That's right. Okay, maybe not you. Yeah, I agree with that.
No,
First,
maybe
with the
you.
rabbi thing, I was thinking, but I know it's a lot of old preachers that just keep preaching and don't shut up and sit
No,
down.
well, I chose that
That's what I
word
was
on
thinking.
purpose. So
Okay.
I like a rabbi. They in the back. You gotta go to the back. When you get back there, you're gonna get a gem. They're not in the front, but they're there,
I hear you.
right? And not taking up space. But I think what Tiffany said about those contradictions, because it's a colonialist machination not to have rights, where you're very clear on when it's time to blank.
Right.
Right? We are trying to return to that as
Mhm.
African people. We don't have that right now.
Mhm.
It's just do whatever you want, as long as you want, and hold on to it as long as you can, and keep it because it's yours, right? And that even goes for
Right.
political spaces as well. So we are returning to those rights where we understand when it's time to change modes in a productive way.
For sure.
And we have to trust that.
For sure.
Well, let's, since we're at time, really, I won't go into another question. I know we didn't get to answer all of them. But I want to open it up for discussion since Comrade Shannon kicked us off. And is there any comments or questions that you wanted to contribute to this discussion overall about anything that these comrades have said or anything that you wanted to contribute?
Tiffany, how did you help the participants in One Africa, One Nation Marketplace understand that this is not a hustle?
That's a good question. So the way the ecosystem of not just One Africa, One Nation Marketplace functions, but all economic development institutions function under the party's leadership is that this is a collective practice. So the market is to what end, right? But building that, takes several steps. So we have community meetings.
Sorry, so can you explain what end means?
Oh, like what's the end game, right? What's the end game? What's the end result? What do I get, or what does everyone get out of this process, right? So we build the capacity. So at the end of the season, of course, that's the end of the season and everybody's opportunity to go ahead and go out and vend and connect and things like that. But in between the scenes, you have the community meetings. You have additional indoor markets to go and help build capacity. You think of political strategies to connect vendors in the community. So case in point, right, during the pandemic, right, we weren't able to get permits to have outdoor markets, right? But there was, individual vendors that were posting up in the park or whatever, and that's fine. But what could we do to support our base, right? What kind of platforms can we put out there so people can have the capacity and the resources to feed, clothe, and house their people, their families, right? So we worked with, Uhuru Furniture and Collectibles to go ahead and build pop-up markets. What was it, like once a month, out in front of Uhuru Furniture. And the busiest street in Philadelphia, Broad Street, right? And that paid dividends, right? And it's not something transactional, it's communal, because we're thinking about the livelihoods of our vendors, but we're also, politicizing them and letting them know that this isn't just something that's transactional. This is self-reliance and self-determination in action, and winning them to that process, right? So, just thinking about how to go ahead and not only think about the economic part, because that's easy, but how can we bring people into political life? How can we educate them on African internationalism? How can we, really force folks to think about their brothers and sisters in arms? So
Thank you for that answer. It did.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And as a vendor, Tiffany used to we would raise money for our nonprofit, but it would be so much greater than that. I mean, we would be communicating and networking with the other vendors.
Yeah.
They would come. I mean, it would just transcend whatever the day was. I still have interactions with many of those vendors on other levels altogether. Not necessarily political, but we bring them into other things that we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It paid dividends.
Don't worry, I'll be there. I was there last year.
Yeah.
But this year I might have a little something.
Word. More feedback than not, we get all types of feedback. It's mixed feedback from vendors talking about the experience, right? Whether you did good or you didn't do good or indifferent, like the people I met, right? The interactions that you had, the people that's interested in your artistry or interested in how you're doing, or the ability to go ahead and talk about like the struggles and find somebody that you can connect with in that kind of intentionally Black ass space.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's the culture that is being built with the One Africa, One Nation Marketplace. It's not about what you can buy. You can buy your shea butter, you can go ahead and get your black soap, but you also find somebody that gets you and understands your struggles, and it will change your life in one way or another, when you leave. So, yeah.
Thank you, Carmen. Any other comments or questions? All right, well, I want to thank our panelists so much. I think that is really great to see the perspective, hear the perspective, and there's so much more that can be said, I'm sure. We don't have enough time for everything that can be shared in this discussion, but I really appreciate you all for agreeing to be a part of the panel and for sharing the way that you did. Thank you so much. So we're gonna have, thank you, one more time for our panelists.
Yes, very nice, thank you.
You may return back to the circle. I give you back to the circle. And,
I have,
oh,
if
yes.
anybody has an interest, I have, some information about the Cuban Medical School. I know this is a very fraught time to think about the kids going to Cuba right now. But it's not gonna be like this always. But just to get some information, if you wanna share it, I'm gonna leave this here for you.
Thank you, Mama.
Sweetheart.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna play a video first.
Okay.
Introduce you.
Okay, that sounds
All
fine.
right, wonderful.
I know it takes me a minute to,
While you're moving,
while I'm moving.
we're gonna,
I got your back, mama.
Thanks, baby. You know I forgot I had it.
you know, we've talked a lot about African women organizations, and all the things that create the sort of space and community within organizations. And we wanted to share a little bit more about, you know, ANWO, and we've been in existence since 2015, so it's been 11 years. And we've had so many different iterations, right? Like, we haven't been as politically strong as we are now. Back then, the day it was kind of fragile, but I'm so glad where we are today. So we're going to give you a little bit of history in this little video, and we hope that you, and then Comrade Shannon, who is part of our membership in Brooklyn, is going to come up and contribute more about ANWO and why folks watching and folks who are in the room or are not yet members can join, should join. Hold on. Here we go. That was not made on purpose. I did not. But Conrad, come on up.
All right, that was a great and powerful video. So, y'all couldn't tell me that I wasn't a card carrying member of AMWO since 2016, right? I'm gonna tell y'all what had happened, okay? So just to back it up, my name is Shannon Jones. I'm the co-founder of an organization called Wrong Sites for NYPD Accountability. When Eric Garner was murdered by the NYPD in July of 2014, you guys remember that thing called Facebook? Facebook, that dinosaur program with all the brontosauruses we still on there. You know,
Yeah.
took putting recipes on there, that stuff we go on there, okay, brothers and sisters that can cook. I'm in that group. But when Eric Garner was murdered in July of 2014, and I'm gonna make it make sense with AMWO, this was around the time on Facebook when if a friend of yours made a comment on someone else's page that you were not on, it would still alert you that some of your friends were talking. Remember them days? Where it was just a whatever. So after Eric Garner was murdered, you know, Facebook was just going berserk. Ding, 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 ding. And I end up in this thread about what Black people should do, what Black people need to do, what we need to stop doing, and what we keep making mistakes doing. And it went on and on and on and on, literally for hours and hours and hours. And it was dozens and dozens and dozens of people with all sorts of spectrum of comment. And eventually someone jumped up and said, I don't know, we ain't on the FCC right in this hour. Somebody jumped up and said, fuck all this talking, where we gonna meet? And from all of those comments that went on for hours and hours and hours and hours, only 8 people showed up to that physical space.
Oh, wow.
Right? I was one of those 8 people. And that's how that organization was born. And through those travels and that traverse, through these direct confrontations with colonialism, from going to precinct community meetings, from organized protests in the street, civilian complaint review board meetings, and all of these really physical confrontations, right? I end up being invited to Black is Back Coalition. This was 2016. And the guest speakers amongst a few was Sister Betty and Mother Sharon Salam, Yusuf Salam's mother. All right. And let me tell you something. I was like, hey, okay, because I was organized, so to speak. But as you said, Tiffany, what's the platform? Where's the backing? Where's the poly-ed? Because like I said in Brooklyn, Black and mad is not enough. Right? Because we mad, you feeling something kicking. You know you don't like what you see, you feeling it. But Black and mad is not enough. And at that Black is Back Coalition meeting, there was a presentation from African National Women's Organization. I felt like I signed a lifetime membership. I mean, I don't know. Perimenopausal now, I could just be remembering it wrong. I don't know. But you couldn't tell me from October 2016, because I've been getting emails almost 10 years, right? Keeping an eye on what AMWO has been doing, as well as African People's Socialist Party, because in 2015, that's who had the right politics on the ground when Freddie Gray was murdered in Baltimore. When we was on Penn North, because Brooklyn and the Bronx, New York, we smoked our asses down there, right? And African People's Socialist Party was there. So by the time 2016 comes and there's a organization under the party that is focused on the unique issues of women, right? And that card slid out, that was a no-brainer. That was a no-brainer in 2016. And yes, I don't even know if you know how that even came about with me. That's how that came about, right?
Yeah.
From African People's Socialist Party being on the ground for Freddie Gray, and then Black is Back Coalition introducing African National Women's Organization in Restoration Plaza in Bed-Stuy. This is how it happened, right? So, administrative follies aside, I had to put pen to paper and put my money where my mouth is, right? So right now I am a legitimate member of African National Women's Organization. So I make that pledge to those who are not official members to support the organization, not in just word, but in deed. Freedom ain't free. You know how this goes, right? This is what supports the institutions that keep Black women in the forefront of shaping our history, shaping our lives, and protecting our future in the ways that we want our future to be for the next generations of younger African women and our young boys. I'm the mother of a 30-year-old, right? You know what I'm saying? My son tells me raising a child in the Bronx was child abuse. Okay, so those are the unique issues for African women that being involved in the organization seeks to address and solve in a tangible way, right? I feel what you're saying, Mariam, about the study can get redundant, and sometimes it can always read as cowardice in a way. Because how often how much you gonna read? You never come outside, right? But that's what African National Women's Organization does by providing campaigns that speak to the issues unique to African women, where we're setting our own destiny. I used to be a child protective specialist. So the CPS work is like ding, 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 right? And how colonialism pays me well to disorganize my own family, right? But will teach me how to do it and teach me how to individualistically justify myself in doing so, right? But you ain't supposed to have that mattress on the floor. You ain't got enough food. I'm gonna take your kids and ship them upstate. So colonialists or beneficiaries of colonialism and oligarchy can get further tax breaks off the backs of your children, because that's what goes on.
That's right.
At least in the state of New York. I don't know about nowhere else, but that's the physical plant of how child removals work in the state of New York, right? Because folks will come down from them outer counties, right? The same outer counties in New York that move a prison economy off of our men, right? Our men are up there adding to the roles for them to have representation.
That's right.
Our children are up there because they've been adopted away, and they're getting tax breaks and adoption subsidy money for that.
That's right.
That comes out of our checks when we do what? Labor, like Mariam said. We're providing the labor without being full beneficiaries of our labor.
Right.
So African National Women's Organization seeks to reconcile those contradictions by being confrontational to undo them, right? We're gonna read some books. We're gonna go to that RNDP on Thursday nights, but it's not canceled, right? We're gonna do that. We're gonna learn how to run a political party system, but we're gonna get outside.
That's right.
And that's what ANWO does. So to anyone within my listening ears on the owl, it's very important to join and be a part of something that has a platform, that has a politic, that is about camaraderie and sisterhood in an authentic way, right? Because to speak to that thing before, all of those are colonial contradictions about resource hoarding. I'm gonna backbite you because I believe there's not enough. The fallacy of scarcity. That's why I do that. Not because I hate you, my sister. Not because of that. But because if I don't backbite you, I'm gonna go without. And that's what colonialism teaches us, where organizations like ANWO seek to undo through action. So again, I want to thank Yejide Mariam as our regional director. Thank you so much for taking the time out to continue to forge ahead this powerful organization. I'm blessed to be a part of it. I look forward to doing much, much more and building the New York branch of ANWO. And pass the plate. I don't know what we using, but you know what I'm saying? Like I said,
You doing
you
the membership one, so if there's no one here who's not a member, I
Right.
see some people.
Yes.
Then you can join. And we have the application on the table over here, so you can consolidate your membership before you go. And there's different levels of membership, like you can be active, or the very basic is like contribute your dues money to the organization so that we can forward the work if you don't have the capacity of doing it yourself. And if you're not an African woman, then it's the donation part, right? Like you can donate as African people to the work of the African National Women's Organization. And what Comrade Shannon was talking about in terms of the Arrest CPS campaign is one of our main works. And she just made the connection so I don't have to, right?
That's right.
So,
And the space costs resources, so no, it actually doesn't, but we want to contribute to
Yes.
Yeah.
the system and the work and
Yeah.
we're gonna do a little tour if you have some time afterwards, and we're
Got
gonna
time.
grab some food to, the history of this place for African people.
Can I have a question?
Yeah.
So I may know, especially some of the sisters, my peers, who may not, they're a little hesitant
Yeah.
to actually join or
Mhm.
something, but they will do some work. You
Yeah.
understand?
Yeah.
So I'd like to know if there's a space for that
There is space for
as
that.
a donation of
Yes.
sorts.
Yes, we could talk about that a little bit more.
Okay.
But we welcome volunteers, we welcome members, we welcome people who help us plan, and supporters who help to finance some of the things that we want to do. So everybody's welcome in the African National Women's Organization. Man, if you're identified as a man, and you can contribute to, you could also volunteer in the work that we do as in the African National Women's Organization. Nothing limits that. Yeah.
And even solidarity forces,
Yeah.
that have some
Non-African people.
pockets.
Yeah.
We like that.
Yeah. So if you are able to join, we have applications on the table. And then if you are able to donate, then we should have did more about the donation, but we have a Cash App, we have a Zelle. I can tap it on my phone.
What's the Cash App? Our stream is still on, correct?
It is on. Cash App is $$ Anwo Uhuru, ANWOUHURU is the Cash App. If you're not into Cash App and you do the Zelle, it's our info@anwouhuru.org email, and you can send money that way as well.
And we would sincerely appreciate that. To those that are out there watching the stream, thank you so much. And again, thank you everybody for contributing to a lovely panel. I hope to see all of you again as I, be in Philly.
Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you so much. Thank you so much, Shannon.
Thank you.
All right. As we start to wrap up, I want to call, Mariam, if you can make the announcements, do you know what they are? Okay, I'll make them. Comrade Tiffany, make an announcement about the marketplace.
Yes. So our first market for the 2026 season is not just a market, but it's also the Health Festival. So Health Festival is really important because it's not just a place where you come and you find out about health challenges and resources, but we politicize it just like everything else, right? So because of colonialism and the system, our Africans are catching hell in terms of access to health resources. We are dying much faster than anyone else. There's so many different health conditions that are specific to Africans because of the colonial contradictions. The Health Festival is important because we built a platform to partner with other community organizations and agencies to talk about this, but also to put material solutions in place, right? So on April 11th is our 12th annual Health Festival and Flea Market, where we'll have free health screenings, blood pressure, eyes. I think we'll have dental resources there. We'll have fitness and health partners in place doing demonstrations, and then you can find resources regarding health to get access to free health resources right here in the community. So we're making those connections that way, and then we'll have, of course, our world famous flea market with all types of vendors providing African clothing, housewares, this and that, and then you'll get a chance to meet organizations under the Uhuru movement that will be vending and giving out information. So Infidum will have representation from ANWO and Decolonization. You'll learn more about the African People's Socialist Party and the work that's being done in the region. And just like everything else, put your time, resources, and talents toward building political power for our people. So that's April 11th in Clark Park, 43rd and Chester. I didn't bring any propaganda because I gave it out to the street team. But if you want to follow us on Instagram, it's Uhuru Flea Market. You can find out more information about the program, how to register as a vendor, so on and so
Thank you for that.
forth.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mariam, can you say more about the Black Mothers March? I'm passing out.
Yes, and yes, on Mother's Day, Mother's Day this year is May 10th. Yes, in DC, we'll be doing the annual Black Mothers March, and essentially that is another, annual-led event to talk about, the roles of African women, but specifically through the lens as mothers, and that is a heavy focus on RSCPS because, the colonial state takes African children out of the home, and, as Comrade Shannon was just saying, they'll take your child out your home for lack of resources and then send them, down to the state and give it to another family. So it's actually ironic because we're taught about scarcity, but the state has resources, they just don't want to give them to have, for lack of a better term, they don't want to give it to your black ass. So they'll give them to someone else. But that is an event that we do need security for. That is an event that is, it's led by Annual, but there's it's like a coalition of other African women-led organizations. And yes, it's, I forgot specifically in which park it was starting at in DC.
We have changed locations because Lafayette, Trump is digging up Lafayette Park, which is right in front of the White House.
Really?
Yeah.
Like,
They're doing,
literally.
yes, there's
Excavating
construction
the park.
that's happening around the White House that prevents the protests that we normally have around it. So we're gonna be at the Lincoln Memorial, y'all. That's where we're gonna be this year.
That's where we gathering at, or we
Yep.
gathering at whatchamacallit and then
gathering.
going on down?
We gathering at Lincoln Memorial.
Okay.
We're gonna do a roundabout back up to Lincoln Memorial.
Okay, not from, where was we at before?
Lafayette, that's the part that's being dug up right now, being fixed up.
That look like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, mhm.
Oh, you mean Malcolm X?
Yeah,
Malcolm X Park, no, we're not.
oh, okay.
And then the final announcement is the African People's Socialist Party International Plenary. It's happening on April 17th through the 19th in St. Louis. So, yes, there are a couple of deadlines that have already passed in terms of housing. And the one for food is fast approaching. So if you are able to come, then we welcome you to come to the city. There's also like affordable housing and, Airbnbs and hotels and stuff that are available to us. The registration is $50 and and there's like food tickets and all of that stuff. But it's the African International People's Socialist Party plenary that speaks to the work that the entire Uhuru movement is organizing around. So AMWO has to give a report. All of the organizations of the movement has to give a report. Has to be tangible, concrete ways in which we are organizing ourselves and our people for liberation. And it's a part of the overall plan to build liberation for our people. So we have these plenaries every 2 years outside of the congresses that we have to make sure that we're on track. So this is going to be an important opportunity for people who wanted to know more about the Uhuru movement, who want to just catch up with the Uhuru movement, who are already in the Uhuru movement to understand what's going on and how everything works together. There's also an opportunity to watch online. They have full access to the event. That ticket is $20. And we already sent out the political report that everybody should read, but we can resend them again. I'm over registration, so I can send all that information out again. So we encourage you to register and participate in the plenary. And that is the end of our program. I'm hungry. And I just want to appreciate, come on in. And I just want to appreciate everybody for.
Rosie, I called, sorry.
Oh, man. Came right in time for
I'm telling you,
but
I was a tourist today.
thank you so much. Thank you so much for everything. Commenting.
There's refreshments and things over in this area.
I forgot it. That's right. Okay.
Yeah, that's just self-serve, right?
It is self-serve, but I'm looking at
Okay.